Have you ever walked away from a conversation knowing deep down you had a point, but still feeling like you lost? Not because you lacked logic, but because the other person controlled the tone, the flow, the room. It's a quiet kind of defeat, the kind that lingers. And it raises the question, is being right enough? The Stoics would say no, because the true aim is not to win arguments, it's to remain unshaken by them. But that doesn't mean staying silent or passive. It means speaking with clarity, with restraint, and with strategy. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never a need to lose your inner peace." That's not weakness. That's dominance of a higher order. Over time, through failure and observation, I've uncovered a set of methods that can shift the balance of any argument, not through aggression, but through calm precision. Some are rooted in logic, others in timing, and a few may surprise you in how quietly effective they are. But each one holds a lesson, not just in rhetoric, but in self-mastery. This isn't about manipulation. It's about learning how to think, speak, and respond like someone who doesn't need to win to be powerful. If you've ever felt dismissed, misunderstood, or overpowered in a conversation, stay with me. You're about to see how reason, structure, and poise can change the way people hear you and the way you carry yourself through conflict. Method 1. The Judo mindset. Every disagreement, no matter how civilized it begins, eventually becomes a test, not of facts, but of ego. You state your case, they state theirs. Then comes the real contest. Who flinches first? Who pushes harder? Who refuses to yield? Most people enter arguments like boxers, fists up, ready to swing. But the Stoic? He enters like a judoka, calm, calculated, waiting. Imagine this. Someone challenges your point in a meeting. They come in hot, confident, even smug. Now, most people would brace themselves, defend their ground, and fire back. But what if you didn't? What if, instead of resisting their push, you leaned into it? You paused, nodded, and said, "You're right about that part. That's a good observation. But here's where I see it differently. What you've just done is far more powerful than winning. You've diffused the tension. You've shown you're not afraid to acknowledge truth, even when it doesn't favor you. And in doing so, you've taken control, not of them, but of the emotional tempo of the conversation. You've transformed from opponent to guide. Stoic strength isn't about overpowering others. It's about mastering yourself so deeply that others can't provoke you. When you concede a small point strategically, it doesn't make you weaker. It makes you unpredictable. And unpredictability in dialogue is power. Most people expect resistance. They don't expect self-assurance wrapped in humility. This doesn't mean you give up your truth. It means you guide the conversation to higher ground. You move from me versus you to us versus the problem. Like a judoka, you redirect energy instead of clashing with it. You keep your center, even while everything around you tries to knock you off balance. So next time someone challenges you, don't stiffen, don't retreat, lean in, absorb, and then, when it matters, strike, not with anger, but with clarity. Let's now move to a second technique, one borrowed from a man who never raised his voice but shook empires with his questions, Socrates. Method 2. The Socratic lens. There's a quiet power in asking the right question at the right time. Socrates knew this. He didn't argue to win. He didn't dominate with facts or clever comebacks. He simply asked questions, gently, persistently, until the truth revealed itself. That's what made him dangerous to the powerful and transformative to those seeking wisdom. And that's what makes this method so timeless. Imagine someone says, "If you're good in school, you'll always get a good job." Now you could challenge that directly. You could list examples, cite data, argue back and forth. But the Stoic way isn't about proving someone wrong. It's about helping them see more clearly. So instead you ask, do you think grades automatically make someone competent? Pause. Let them think. Then, would you agree that emotional intelligence or adaptability also matter in the real world? You're not attacking, you're inviting. You're giving the other person the dignity to reflect without shame, and that's why this method works. It lowers defenses, it creates space for honesty. Most people don't believe what they believe because they've tested it. They believe it because it's never been questioned out loud. The Stoic doesn't seek applause for clever arguments. He seeks clarity. He's more interested in unearthing contradictions than in collecting victories. Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." The Socratic method reveals what people think they know and gently holds it up to the light. The beauty is, this method works even on yourself. Ask, why do I believe this? Where did that idea come from? What if I'm wrong? These aren't signs of doubt, they're signs of strength, because only the weak cling to certainty out of fear. The wise embrace questions as doorways to growth. So next time you're in a disagreement, don't rush to speak. Ask, listen, and let the silence do the heavy lifting. In our next method, we'll explore how subtle shifts in language can change, not just how you sound, but how you're received. Method 3. Language as leverage. Words are never just words. In Stoic philosophy, speech is a reflection of thought, and every sentence you speak shapes not only how others see you, but how you see yourself. That's why the wise don't just speak to be heard. They speak to bring clarity, to disarm chaos, and above all, to maintain control over themselves. Let's say someone says something offensive. You could snap back, "You're rude," or you could breathe and say, "I feel disrespected by that comment." Same energy, completely different effect. The first triggers defensiveness. The second invites reflection. It shifts the dynamic from accusation to observation, and in that shift, you take back the power. This is the art of calm communication, using language not to manipulate, but to elevate. When you reframe, you always mess things up into, "I'm struggling to feel supported right now." You move the conversation from battle to understanding. You move it away from ego and toward essence. Rhetorical questions, too, are powerful tools. Surely we can agree that respect matters in any relationship, right? Suddenly, disagreement becomes harder. Not because you've trapped them, but because you've reminded them of shared values. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But the same is true of speech. The tone you use, the words you choose, they don't just influence the listener. They reflect your own state of mastery. The goal isn't to sound clever. The goal is to remain centered, even in conflict. In a noisy world full of shouting matches, the person who speaks slowly, deliberately, and respectfully becomes magnetic. Not because they dominate the room, but because they command themselves. So the next time tension rises, don't just think about what you want to say. Ask yourself, how do I want to sound? Then speak like someone who doesn't just want to win, but wants to remain whole. Coming up, we'll explore a method that plays on contrast and how it can shift perception instantly. Method 4. The contrast effect. Sometimes the way to guide a conversation isn't by pushing harder, it's by shifting perspective. In Stoic thought, perception is everything, And one of the most underrated tools to shape perception is the contrast effect. The art of placing ideas side by side to change how they're seen. Imagine you're in a debate. The other person completely disagrees with your view. Now, if you come straight at them with your real proposal, they'll likely reject it. But if you start with something deliberately extreme, something clearly unrealistic, then follow it with what you actually want, that second idea suddenly sounds calm, rational, and fair. Why? Because next to the exaggerated option, your real suggestion feels like middle ground. It's a technique negotiators use. For example, a manager might say, "We could work weekends to hit this deadline," then add, "But if everyone just stays an hour late for the next 5 days, we can make it work." The second idea feels like a relief, even if you wouldn't have agreed to it 5 minutes earlier. But here's where the Stoic insight comes in. This isn't about trickery, it's about timing and tone. You're not deceiving anyone, you're helping them see things in a new light. Marcus Aurelius taught us that everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. The contrast effect reminds us that people often judge ideas not in isolation, but in comparison. Use this method carefully. It's not a blunt weapon, it's a lens. A way to bring attention to what really matters by placing it beside what clearly doesn't. And in moments of tension or disagreement, that shift in perception can be enough to bring calm, even compromise. As we continue, let's move from shaping perceptions to overwhelming them with the strategic use of information as our next method. Method 5. The power of prepared knowledge. Sometimes the sheer weight of knowledge can tilt an entire conversation. When you're prepared, not just emotionally but intellectually, you don't need to raise your voice. You let the facts speak. And when they speak in waves, the effect can be undeniable. Imagine this. You're in a heated discussion about a business decision. The other person feels confident until you calmly begin to lay out point after point. Have you considered the 20% drop in last quarter's performance, the shift in consumer behavior post-pandemic, the new regulation from last month? 3 out of 4 expert panels have already raised red flags. You're not shouting. You're not even defending. You're simply presenting. This method, what some call information bombing, isn't about showing off. It's about preparation. A Stoic doesn't speak much, but when he does, it lands, because he's done the work. He doesn't overwhelm to dominate. He overwhelms because truth, when laid bare with clarity, often speaks louder than any emotional appeal. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." If you want to be someone who is calm in crisis, start by becoming someone who is informed in silence. The flood of data isn't a distraction, it's a current you ride. While others flail, you navigate with direction. Still, use this method wisely. Too much information, thrown too quickly, can look like intimidation. But when delivered with poise, it becomes presence. Your quiet confidence creates an atmosphere where the other person feels, even if they can't say it, "I might need to reconsider." If you've ever been in a moment like this, where clarity came through knowledge, not volume, comment calm facts below. And if you're the kind of thinker who values mastery over noise, subscribe now. This space is built for you. Now let's explore what happens when truth is replaced with speed, when the argument is won not through accuracy, but velocity. Enter the Gish Gallop. Method 6. Spotting the Gish Gallop. Have you ever been in a conversation where the other person keeps throwing out fact after fact, opinion after opinion, moving so fast that you can barely keep up, let alone respond? You know something feels off, but you're too overwhelmed to untangle it. That's not just messy debate, that's a tactic. It's called the Gish Gallop. This method relies on quantity, not quality. It floods the conversation with rapid-fire points, some true, some distorted, some completely false. The goal is simple: to wear you down, to create the illusion of strength through speed and volume. And if you try to refute everything, you've already lost. Because as Brandolini's law reminds us, disproving nonsense takes 10 times the effort it took to say it. So what does a Stoic do when chaos comes knocking? He slows it down. He doesn't chase every point. He sees the pattern, names it calmly. You've brought up a lot of claims. Let's focus on one and examine it carefully. That single sentence is a power move. It signals that you are not here to play defense. You are here to think. Then choose the weakest link in their argument. Expose it gently, without mockery. Once that falls apart, their entire wall of noise begins to crumble. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In the storm of fast words and forced pressure, you do not owe the world a reaction. You owe yourself clarity. The Gish Gallop is a sprint, but the Stoic walks. He moves with care, with weight, with intention. He teaches the room that speed does not equal substance. So the next time someone tries to win through overwhelm, don't get louder. Get still. And in that stillness, dismantle the rush with reason. Let's now look at what happens when the strategy shifts, not toward overwhelm, but distraction. The redirection of attention is subtle, but powerful. Method 7. Holding focus in chaos. We've all been there. You're making a solid point. The energy is building. And then, suddenly, the other person says, "Well, you weren't so perfect last week either." Now, the conversation isn't about your idea. It's about your behavior, or your tone, or your past mistake. That moment right there, that's not debate. That's diversion. This move has a name: the red herring. It pulls attention away from the real issue and into a new emotional arena. Often it's subtle. It comes as a side comment, a vague accusation, or a loaded question. But its purpose is always the same: to knock you off balance and steer the conversation into emotional waters where logic can't breathe. The Stoic doesn't chase distractions. He recognizes them. He pauses. Then, gently but firmly, he returns to center. That's another issue, and I'm open to talking about it. But let's stay with this for now. With one sentence, you reclaim the rhythm. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." When the conversation veers, the one who remains focused becomes the anchor. Not because he resists everything, but because he refuses to be moved by anything not worth his energy. That said, not all redirections are manipulative. In moments of high tension, a purposeful change of focus to a shared value, a common goal, or even a gentle joke can reset the room. But that's not evasion. That's leadership. The difference lies in intent. The Stoic doesn't use distraction to escape conflict. He uses attention to guide it back to what matters. He knows that clarity isn't a trick, it's a compass. So the next time someone tries to drag the discussion sideways, ask yourself, is this a path to understanding or just noise in disguise? And with that awareness, prepare for the next move, where agreement isn't forced but built, one layer at a time. Method 8. Leading with coherence. People don't like to contradict themselves, at least not publicly. Once someone says yes to a small truth, they'll often feel pressure, even unconsciously, to follow that line of reasoning wherever it leads. This is the foundation of the coherence principle. a powerful method that works not through force, but through consistency. Let's say you're debating someone about leadership. Instead of jumping straight to your bold conclusion, you begin small. Would you agree that leaders should lead by example? Most people will nod. Then you ask, and if they break the rules they set, it weakens trust, right? Another yes. Now, step by step, you're building a chain of reasoning, and once they've agreed to the early links, it becomes harder to reject the later ones without seeming inconsistent. The Stoics understood this principle well. They believed that consistency in thought and action is a sign of integrity. As Epictetus taught, first learn the meaning of what you say and then speak. The coherence principle is not about trapping others. It's about revealing truth one layer at a time, starting from common ground. But be mindful, this method has limits. When the person you're speaking with is emotionally charged or holds beliefs rooted in fear, even the smallest concession can feel threatening. They may resist, not because you're wrong, but because they feel exposed. The Stoic accepts this. He doesn't rush. He plants seeds and lets time do its work. If your words are rooted in reason and your tone anchored in calm, you'll often find that people eventually follow the path you've laid because they already helped pave it. And from here, we move into something even more subtle. How structure, not content, can shape the way your message is received. Enter the rhythm of threes. Method 9, the rule of 3. There's something ancient and almost instinctive about the number 3. We see it in stories, in structure, in speech. Beginning, middle, end, past, present, future, mind, body, spirit. The human brain is drawn to triads because they feel complete, not overwhelming, not too little, just enough. That's why when you're explaining a point or defending a decision, giving 3 clear reasons lands stronger than just one. Why did I choose this approach? It's efficient, sustainable, and proven. You're not rambling, you're building, and your listener feels anchored, not scattered. Even when describing patterns, the rule of 3 holds power. 1 event, a fluke, 2, a coincidence. But by the 3rd time, the mind starts seeing a pattern. 3 people said the same thing. Maybe there's something to it. This perception shift isn't magic, it's psychology, and a wise speaker uses it with intention, not manipulation. Stoic communication is never about overwhelming with volume, it's about creating clarity, structure, and rhythm. Epictetus urged his students to speak only when their words were better than silence. So when you do speak, let your words carry shape. Deliver your thoughts like a well-crafted sentence, balanced, thoughtful, and sharp. The rule of 3 also disciplines your thinking. When you force yourself to distill your argument into 3 key points, you cut fluff. You trim emotional fat. What's left is lean, logical, and persuasive. This too is Stoic, cutting away excess, speaking with intention, and respecting the listener's time and focus. So the next time you're asked for your opinion or need to make your case, don't ramble. Think, choose, and speak in 3s. It's not just effective, it's timeless. Now let's turn to our final method, something less structured, more spontaneous. A reminder that sometimes the sharpest point is made with a single, perfectly timed line. Method 10, the precision of humor. In any tense exchange, timing is everything, and sometimes the most unexpected weapon isn't logic or volume, but wit. A single well-timed remark can shift the energy of an argument, reset the tone of the room, or disarm someone who came ready for war. That's the power of lightning-fast humor, not the silly kind, but the precise kind. The kind that cuts through tension like a blade through fog. These aren't jokes for entertainment. They're strategic. They're short, sharp, and delivered at the exact moment when the conversation is beginning to spiral or stagnate. Think of them like a pressure valve. When an argument becomes overheated, a pointed one-liner, light enough to break the mood, strong enough to redirect the moment, can bring everyone back to their senses. Take this example. Someone is aggressively trying to out-talk you, dominating the space. Instead of fighting for volume, you calmly say, "Wow, I didn't realize this was a monologue." You've said just one sentence, but the message lands. Or in a heated debate where someone's being condescending, a quiet smile and "appreciate the TED Talk" might be all it takes to bring the tone down without escalating. But here's the Stoic insight. Humor must never be cruel. It's not used to humiliate, to provoke shame, or to gain applause at someone else's expense. Seneca once warned that mockery, though clever, often reveals more about the speaker's insecurity than the target's faults. So, the goal is not to win the room, it's to bring the room back into balance. Used poorly, humor becomes deflection, but used well, it becomes clarity. It says, "I'm not rattled, I'm not angry, I'm fully present." A good line, delivered with calm eyes and steady tone, says to the world, "I see what's happening, and I choose not to take it too seriously." There's a kind of confidence that doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to overwhelm. It just waits for the perfect moment, and then speaks, not to crush, but to remind everyone, including yourself, that control doesn't always look like resistance. Sometimes it looks like laughter. Sometimes the best way to silence chaos is with a sentence so light it lifts the weight of the entire room. And that, my friend, brings us to the end. 10 techniques, not for overpowering others, but for mastering yourself in every conversation that tests your clarity, your calm, and your character. No single method works for every moment. The right approach depends on who you're speaking to, what's at stake, and how grounded you are when the pressure rises. Some people respond to logic, others need clarity, but all of them feel the weight of presence when you speak with calm, not chaos. The Stoic doesn't aim to win arguments, he aims to rise above them, and that begins with self-awareness. The real power is not in having the last word, but in knowing which word truly matters. If you found value in these strategies and want to carry this mindset further, consider subscribing. This space is built for those who choose clarity over conflict. And if one idea stood out to you today, drop a comment with the words, "Clear mind." Let's see who's walking this path with intention. There's always more to learn. And in the next video, we'll go even deeper into mastering not just your voice, but your presence. Stay steady, stay sharp. You're just getting started.